All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first event of our season, Deep Dives. My name is Diana Morgan, Sonoma Bach's Executive Director, and I'm just so excited to have you all on our Zoom call tonight to talk about our new season with Bob Worth, our music director. And so I'll just pass it directly over to Bob. I'm sure that he's ready to get started. So thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, it's good to see everybody, although at the moment I can't see any of you. Um, I am very excited about this season. It's called Deep Dives, our 2024-25 season. Hopefully, you're looking at the brochure right now if everything is going right. Diana, are you looking at the brochure?
Yes, I'm looking at the brochure.
Great. Okay. But before we get into the season, I just wanted to talk just a teeny bit about what we've been doing over these past 7 years. Um, in 7 years ago, we had a season called Il Palazzo della Musica, and we decided to have each one of our, it was then 8 concerts per season, be somehow related to Italy. And some of you will remember that we had multiple themes, lots and lots of Italian music, of course, but also music from other places because Italian music influenced other countries and vice versa. So it was a way of taking the rather large field of early music and focusing it in. And we were planning to actually to go to Italy with some of the Sonoma people that didn't quite turn out. That was the initial motivation for having an Italian season. But I loved doing it, and everyone seemed to enjoy it. And so we just kept on doing these thematic seasons, and it's really been a voyage. The next season was Light Out of Darkness, and we explored that theme, which couldn't possibly be more different than the Italian theme, or what followed after that, which was called All Over the Map, and that was your typical geographical exploration. So we just kind of kept them coming until the pandemic, and then obviously it was a non-cappella season that year, although we did lots and lots of stuff on Zoom. And actually, some good things came out of that. For one thing, we're doing this particular presentation tonight on Zoom, which we could not or would not have done before. Coming out of the pandemic, I selected the theme, The Flowering of the Spirit, which is a quote from a Stephen Spender poem that I love called I Think Continually of Those Who Are Truly Great. And it seemed to me, to us, that we needed to tend to our own spirits and the spirits of everyone who comes to, of our community, of people that come to hear us. And so we put a lot of attention towards that. And we closed that season with Brahms' Requiem, which is the most healing piece I know. Um, Following season, what's called Bach's World, and that was a sort of low-hanging fruit for an organization called Sonoma Bach. We had done earlier, much earlier, in 2005, and then once in the late 90s, all Bach seasons. But this was a return to that, and we explored not only Bach's music, but music that affected Bach, music from his forebears, and some music from his of his descendants, and all the influences back and forth in the various eras of Bach's life. That was a kind of a natural one for us. And then last season, some of you will recall that we took on this idea of art and music put together. In other words, what can we learn about music from art, and what can we learn about art from music? And we explored that theme in various different kinds of ways. Each concert set had its own images that went along with the music. I think the one that probably illustrates it most dramatically was the Singing Walls, which I'm sure some of you came to, in which we sang motets which depicted in musical and verbal form the actual biblical stories that are on the walls of the Church of Saint Seraphim down there by Friedman Brothers. Um, and that was a really great season. One good thing about these thematic seasons is that it forces me and all of us to kind of stretch and encompass new areas see and hear and take in art, art writ large. That is to say, art, music, visual art, sculpture, poetry. Obviously, we deal with text all the time because we do so much vocal music. So now we come finally to where we are now, deep dives. And this is something that's, again, it's a bit of low-hanging fruit. It's 7 different concert sets that each of which explores the music of a single composer. So it's kind of obvious in a way that we might try to do that, but we've tried to really make it the very deep explorations and also of what I think is a wonderful series of composers. So this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And as soon as I thought of this deep dives thing, I thought of a humpback whale. So we had several images that we messed around with this, but this is the one that we came up with to kind of stand for the whole season. So the idea is that we dive into the waters of these of a number of great composers, and we've chosen composers from a rather large swath of time, all the way back into the 15th century and all the way through the 18th century. Um, didn't really touch on the 19th century. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about each of these concerts, and I'll be turning to the appropriate page so that you can see what we're talking about. Um, as many of you know, we have slots. We've organized our season years ago, and we've adjusted it over time. But we always have an opening recital. We always have an early music Christmas. We always have an organ recital, and so on. So that's why we have these little rubrics. In this case, opening recital. We're opening with music by William Byrd, one of my personal favorite composers, and someone that I've many times we've done lots and lots of Bird's music over the years, but we've never devoted an entire concert to his music. We are a bit limited when we sing. We open at Saint Seraphim when we sing there because we're not allowed to do secular music. It has to be sacred music, although they are willing to construe that in a rather broad way, and we can't use any instruments there. So that means that Byrd wrote instrumental music, and he also wrote lots of secular music. So the deep dive is into the sacred side of Bird's musical life. That's plenty of big of a pool to dive into, so there's no problem with that. I've decided to, as I was working with the repertoire, you can see the blurb uh, uh, features the Mass for the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and we are doing that. But we actually ended up getting it organized into the first set is the Nativity of the Virgin, and the second set is a liturgical reconstruction of the music for the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. So it's sort of like bookmarking the life of the Virgin Mary, and then so we use Byrd wrote 3 different masses, what we call, the normal mass ordinary, Kyrie, Gloria, Credo Sanctus, and Agnus Dei. He wrote 3 settings of that, and we're using 2 of them. He wrote a 3-voice one, which we're not using. He wrote a 4-voice mass, and he wrote a 5-voice mass. So those are the 2 masses that got encompassed, along with all of the quote propers for those particular masses. So you'll hear an array of motets that seem to be sort of, let's see, cradled around the Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, and Agnus Dei. And then we have a couple of introductory motets which lead into each half, and a very special encore, which I won't give away. So I'll play a little bit of music. I'm going to try to, if I can organize my times well enough, try to play a little bit from each of our sets. But here's one which actually just made it into the program as we were rehearsing. We decided to change out a piece. This is one of my very favorite pieces. It's a setting by William Byrd of the opening verses of Psalm 95. Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us heartily rejoice in the strength of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving, show ourselves glad in him with psalms. Venite exultemus Domino, for 6 voices by William Byrd. course, all of these pieces we could play the whole piece, but we would never get through our program. I have a I have a love for six voice music, and we have six singers in the consort that will be performing this set. And there's just something perfect about six voice music, not in any sense to denigrate music for other amounts of voices, but there's something rather symmetrical. You can do three duets, two trios, there are asymmetrical, five voices versus one voice. There's just so many wonderful possibilities. It makes a cappella singing almost symphonic. And then, as a second example from that set, one of my favorite bird pieces, and perhaps one of my favorite pieces of all time, is the Agnus Dei from his Mass for Four Voices. Here's how that sounds. I don't think there's ever been a more healing piece than that. Something so perfect. It starts just with the two voices, adds a third, finally adds a fourth for the third statement, which ends Dona nobis pacem, grant us peace. Now we're going to go on to our second concert set in October. We call this our Thanksgiving set, more or less because of the propinquity between the concert set and Thanksgiving itself. So this one features Heinrich Schütz. As you can see, he was called in his time the Orpheus of the 17th century, and he lived an incredibly long life for his period. As you can see, 1585 to 1672. Lived through the 30 Years' War, lived through plenty and famine, or at least hardship and shortness of supplies. And produced an immense amount of beautiful music. We have a viol consort for this set, so it's not a cappella. It's in Schroeder Hall. 5 of our 7 concerts are in Schroeder Hall, and so here I've taken a different approach. The liturgical approach was appropriate for the bird material, but instead of doing that, and certainly we aren't limited by no instruments. We don't have that problem, and we also don't have the has to be a cappella, has to be sacred music. So we're able to do some of Schutz's secular music as well as sacred music. As I said, he lived a very long life. So what the program begins with his very first publication, Opus 1, which was in 1611 when the composer was 26 in his late 20s. And he went south to Italy. Like, who wouldn't want to go south from Germany to Italy for the food, if nothing else, for the food, also for the weather, and there's lots of other great things about the beautiful city of Venice, which is where he spent, I believe, over a year. And he published his it's indicated as the primo libro dei madrigali a cinque voci, the first book of madrigals for five voices, but he only wrote one book. He did go back to Venice later on in his life, though, and on that trip, he seems to have been interested in studying more what to do with large ensembles and double or even triple choirs, things like that. So this will really be, I can't say cradle to grave, but it will be, our program works through not all, but touches on many of Schutz's publications throughout his whole life. And the last thing in our program is from what's called his swan song. He literally called it that himself. First example I want to play for you is one of these madrigals. To me, it's amazing that the young Schutz could come down. I mean, of course, by this time there was lots of commerce and travel back and forth between the various parts of Europe. And this was becoming more common and more possible for someone who lived in Germany to get to know French music or get to know even Spanish music, English, certainly English music, and Italian music, as in this case. But the amazing thing to me is the incredibly the wonderful way in which Schutz picked up the Madrigalian style and sets Italian text incredibly idiomatically. Here's one of the madrigals we'll be performing: Selve beate, blissful woods. If sighing in fate whispers you used to lament, to our lament, now you can rejoice and loosen your tongues. As many as branches play at the sound of these laughing breezes, full of our joy. This is quite a romp, as we call it. Now, what the gold standard for that is having the words, and ideally, if you can read score in your hand, so that you get to really appreciate the way the music changes as the words move on. It begins with sighing, but it ends up rejoicing and loosening many tongues. And you could probably, even if you didn't know what the words were, you could tell the way the mood is mercurial, always going with wherever the text is going. It's fantastic, and that relationship between text and music and vivid illustration in music of text is one of the gifts of Italian musical culture to Europe and to all of us. The second example we'll play is a sacred song from the Canzone Sacre. This is about 14 years later, and he's back. He's back in Germany. He spent a large portion of his career in and around the city of Dresden. So this is a psalm, and it's Psalm 125, verses 1 to 3. Many of you have sung this in one way or another. The title is Cantate Domino, And I'm sure many of you have sung Cantate Dominus in English, Sing to the Lord a New Song. Now, you might think that sounds an awful lot like a madrigal. If it wasn't a Latin text with the sacred, it wasn't if the words weren't from the Bible, and you compared the sound and the affects um, to the madrigal that we just heard, you think that's kind of the same idiom, and that's true. And madrigalian interpretation invaded sacred music big time. So composers like Monteverdi and like Schütz um, loved to illustrate through music the text, especially when the text is juicy, really melancholic or like sad things are happening, but also how obviously happy things as well. This is an example of the latter. So that was as I mentioned that was a gift. That kind of expressivity was a gift from the south to the north. I'm not saying that northern music didn't have expression before, but it's something that's wonderful to watch as you listen to music from different eras, how these different skeins move around. And especially as the history progressed and transportation became better and commerce became better, that it became possible for everybody to have access to everything, which of course now we have. I'm not saying we're necessarily in in a perfect situation right now, but it is an amazing time for anybody who's into music because you get to go online and all of these I'm playing for you from YouTube, and almost every one of the examples I'm giving has multiple recordings available for free on YouTube, and I have to say that's pretty cool. Going on now to December, here's something. We're doing Messiah. It's the first time in at least 20 years that Sonoma Bach has done Messiah. The last time we did it was when we were doing annual concerts with the Santa Rosa Symphony. The Bach Choir used to be, for the subscription concerts of the Santa Rosa Symphony, our Sonoma Bach Choir used to be the core choir to which we would add high school singers, JC singers, and other community singers. But we also did, starting in, I want to say, the late 90s or early aughts, we started doing an annual Bach choir production, which we did in 3 different churches. Most of the time, it was 3 Catholic churches: St. Vincent's in Petaluma, the Cathedral in St. Eugene's in Santa Rosa, and then Our Lady of Guadalupe up in Windsor. But this particular production, the last time we did Messiah, one of them was at Annalee High School, and I think it's the only time that we've ever performed there. It's a pretty nice hall, actually. So most of you obviously are familiar with Messiah. Um, the big thing about Messiah is what are you going to do with it? Are you going to do the whole thing? Are you going to do just the first, doing it at Christmas time? Are you going to do just the Christmas story? And we worked on that a lot. I'm very, very pleased to be able to say that my colleague and friend Amanda McFadden is going to be conducting this production and has been doing so ever since we started just after Labor Day. Many of you know that we've been working her in more and more in all sorts of different roles, including plenty of conducting. But this is a chance for Amanda to conduct a major work with us, and I think we're all really excited about that. So we've been rehearsing at the Green Music Center, in Schroeder Hall, and also in other spaces for this. The big deal with the Messiah, then, as I started to say, is what do you do? Do you do the whole thing to pretty much ensure that a certain number of people are going to leave the hall before the concert's over because it's so long? Or are you going to do some kind of cut version? And as you can see from our brochure, which I got a little bit behind here, we are doing, and as I put it in the brochure, a judiciously abridged version of Messiah. And Amanda and I worked very hard on this. We went back and forth and discussed a lot of different options. There's plenty of abridged versions out there. We looked at some of those, and then we basically rolled our own. And I'm excited about it. I think it's it has so many of the great choruses and arias from parts 2 and parts 3. And it wraps up. It has everything that's most important. So I'm really excited about that, and the rehearsals are going really well. It's going to be fun. Most of you know, of course, Messiah, but we got to give a few examples. So here's the first chorus from the piece. You notice how the mouth of the Lord is the basis. Just saying. Yeah, so that's going to be fun. We have a full-on Baroque orchestra for that, and trumpets and drums, of course. And it's a great lineup of soloists. It's going to be a really fun production. And Diana says that our Sunday concert is already half sold out. So right after this Bach talk, you could log onto our website if you want and make sure you have tickets to Messiah. So that's going to be fun. And as I say, it's been a long time since we did it. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And I have to say, I just enjoy being a bass. It's just fun to sing, and Amanda's really fun to sing with. So it's all good. Here's another one from the little bit less known, but one of the excellent ones from the piece. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. And then there's a huge change. And the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. And this, by the way, is from Isaiah 53. And that's one of the things, many of you know this already, but I'll mention it. One of the interesting things about Messiah is that so much of the Christmas tale, of the Passion tale, of the spreading of the word, so much of those stories are told from the Old Testament texts, not from the New Testament. Yes, we do get some New Testament texts for sure, but it's a really artistic libretto, and really imaginative the way that all of the texts are meshed together to tell the story. It's really fun. Oh, we like sheep. So it goes on like that. These people are oblivious, right? They've turned everyone to his own way. And then the the axe drops finally. And I'll play you the part that leads into the final. And the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. It's incredible stuff. In the January, we always have our organ recital, and for the last 7 or 8 years, it's featured Ann Laver. Ann Laver, as some of you know, but probably not all of you, actually played our organ when it was resident in Rochester, New York, which is where she went to grad school at Eastman School of Music. And she was the music director at the church in which our organ was temporarily set up. If you've seen our organ, you wonder about this because it doesn't look mobile. It's not very mobile. But after we bought it, it was built for a church in Toledo. Um, we weren't ready for it. And so it went to Rochester and was set up there in two different churches, playable. So Annie, it was her organ for a year or maybe 2 years, I can't remember. Then it actually moved to Stanton, Virginia, where the builders have their shop, and they reconditioned it. And then finally, it moved out to the Green Music Center. Um, and our friend David Parsons, who's the curator of the organs at Sonoma State, learned about Annie and connected us with her back. I think her first recital she did with us was the Italian Year. So we love Annie. We love working with Annie. She's coming out, and she'll be doing music by Samuel Scheidt, who was born 2 years after. I call them the Shh people because Schütz was born in 1585, Schein was born in 1586, and Scheidt was born in 1587. So there's a big little period there. Um, we've featured Scheidt's works here and there, but we've never featured him in a deep dive. So I'm excited to hear that. Annie has called the concert "The Art of Variation" because Scheidt wrote lots of variation pieces. Um, and I'm going to play for you just a bit of one of his variations from the Tabulatura Nova, 1624, of a hymn which many of you know. It's the chorale which closes St. John Passion, that tune. And this is the beginning of one of his variations on Herzlich lieb hab ich dich, o Herr. So the concert will include lots of music like that. But as some of you know, in the last several years, we've been doing collaborations between one of our vocal groups and Annie. And that's going to happen this time too. Scheit wrote a lot of vocal music, a lot of really good vocal music. In particular, he wrote lots of music for 8-voice double choir, and we're going to be doing some of that, as we are also in the Schutz show, by the way. This one that I'll play you a bit of is a piece for 8-voice double choir, and it's a iteration or a variation on another famous chorale, Komm Heiliger Geist, which if you've been following us for a while, you may recognize it because it's another favorite hymn of ours, and I always seek out opportunities to do this whenever possible, to do versions of Komm Heiliger Geist whenever possible, because I think of it as one of the most, I don't know, just noble pieces of music that exists on this planet. So here's the opening of Scheit's setting of Komm Heiliger Geist for 8-voice double choir from his Canciones Sacrae of 1620. The great thing with a piece like this is to know the chorale backwards and forwards. And all the Lutherans that at that point would know, they all knew all of the Martin Luther tunes really, really well. And when you know a tune super well, and then you hear that where it's invading an entire 8-voice texture and bouncing around like a grand tennis match between 8 participants, it's really something. It kind of fills your head and your soul. And then when you have the incredible words, through the splendor of your light, you have gathered in faith people from all the tongues of the world, so that there may be sung, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, praise the Lord. It's pretty great stuff. So now we move on, and I will remember to come up here and show you the image, Ludwig Zenfel. If I could see you, I would say, raise your hand if you're familiar with Ludwig Zenfel. But I can't see you because I've got everything I need here to do the presentation. My guess is that some people might not raise their hand, or at least not very high. But Zenfel turns out to be one of those hiding in plain sight type people. About 10 or 12 years ago, I mean, I always knew about Zenfel, and there's one or two famous songs that we all learn, in choir or in grad school or somewhere. But I never really got into him until a while ago, and I'm going to play you the two pieces that grabbed me so immediately, but our sort of raison d'etre for this concert is A, he was an incredible composer, but B, a brand new edition of his sacred works just came out. This is another Seraphim concert, so we have to be sacred and we have to be a cappella. And that's perfect because there's a massive amount of music from Zenfel. I'm going to play you just a couple of examples. The piece I'm about to start will give you will give you a sense of like what captured me. We were doing a concert that went around the church calendar, and this was apropos, and um, and I just kind of found it looking for text strings. Really, I mean, I liked the text for gay essay, um, and the text is beautiful. A shoot sprang from the stalk of Jesse, a blossom appeared upon it, the Son of the Most High. What the prophet had preached was realized by God the Merciful when the angel's voice said, "Hail, you who are full of grace." But it wasn't just the text, it was this, don't know how to describe it, this incredible music, which apparently only Zenful knew how to do. I mean, somebody could and should write a dissertation on like why, how is it that that works so beautifully? It always makes tears spring to my eyes. There's something about the freedom of those lines and the joy that's inherent in them that's just like nobody else. It's amazing stuff. And he also can write, expressive music for sad pieces or powerful pieces. He pretty much does it all. But that idiom is to me so powerful. And of course, to get to sing that music in Seraphim is going to be really fun. And I think it'll be fun to hear it too. That concert is going to be in part structured around the Quinque Salutationes al Nostro Domine Jesu Christo by Zenful. 5 salutations to the Lord Jesus Christ. And so there's 5 of these little pieces, and each one consists of nothing but names for Jesus. Hail, this is the first one, which we'll hear a bit of. Hail, Lord Jesus Christ, blessed King, Word of the Father, Son of the Virgin, Lamb of God, salvation of the world, sacred host, Word made flesh, source of compassion. All these possible titles or attributes of Jesus. And this too calls forth special music. You'll probably hear some relationship to what you just heard, but I think you'll probably uh, also hear a difference in style appropriate to um, this fertile outpouring of names for the beloved one. I don't know about you, but hearing music like that and definitely singing music like that just makes me feel better about the world. I mean, I don't know how better to describe it, but it's like when we're doing that, when we're in communion with other people in listening or singing or just being in that space, it's just a special honor to get to do that. Now, how could we leave out Claudio Monteverdi? Not possible. It's been a long time since we did an all Monteverdi set. I think about 20 years. We've done plenty of Monteverdi in the interim, but not a deep dive for quite some time. Most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Monteverdi and certainly with some of his more famous works like the 1610 Vespers, etc. We're not going to be doing that piece, though we've done it twice in the past, and we'll get back to it for sure at some point. But we're going to be doing another sort of work through, sort of parallel to the Schutz show, that the kind of a chronological run through of Zerfler. And he wrote, as many of you know, an infinite number of wonderful madrigals. I'm going to play one for you. But he wrote 8 books of madrigals plus a 9th book. And they arranged, in that time, he spanned the period. He was born in 1567 and died in 1643. And so his life almost is evenly bisected by the changeover from the 16th century to the 17th century. And his music, same thing. His early madrigals are more in the older style, and he really was one of the major people who ushered in the 17th century, the Baroque period. The 17th century, what was called then the seconda pratica, the second practice, as opposed to the old practice, which was called the prima pratica, the first practice. Here's a madrigal by Monteverdi, which we will surely be doing. It's called Non più guerra, on a text by Giovanni Battista Guarini. And it's got a great text. No more war, but pity, pity, my beautiful eyes, my triumphant eyes. Why do you take arms against a heart already taken and surrendered to you? Kill the villains, kill the one who arms and defends himself, not the one that vanquished me, adores you. Do you wish that I would die? Well, I would at least die yours. And the sorrow of dying I would feel, but it wouldn't make any difference. Now, this is a dysfunctional love, right? But that's a favorite topic of musicians in all periods. Check out this incredible madrigal. It starts with a musical depiction, a cappella choir, a cappella quintet, depicting a form of battle. This one is an amorous battle. Do you want me to die? in the words of my late friend and colleague Dale Cutler, that would bring a tear to a glass eye. Now, there's lots of different kinds of music we could explore from Monteverdi, but I want to give one little example, which is what I would call sort of a madrigalian psalm setting. And this one, you'll hear that the texture is very similar. It's a five-voice texture, and it's imitative polyphony, and it's a dramatic psalm. Praise the Lord, Jerusalem, for he strengthens the bars of your gates. He blesses your children within you. This is from a posthumous publication, published about 8 years after Monteverdi died. We don't know when it was written, but it's definitely by Monteverdi. And this music, is really fun. I've done several sets that feature this music. You should check it out if you can. Here is the opening of Laude Jerusalem. It's a very colorful psalm in terms of lots of changes and different moods and such, and he follows them just in the classic madrigalian way. It's such fun music to sing. And now we'll go to the last concert of our season, which is who else but Johann Sebastian Bach. And here I wanted to select a kind of a different kind of theme. You could do all of Bach, but we did that a couple of years ago, and this was so I decided to try to like burrow in a certain kind of way to a period or a period in his life when he was writing a certain kind of music. And I've always been really interested in his Weimar music. We've done lots of it over the years, and this concert is, instead of including like five or three, usually would be three Bach cantatas, maybe a small instrumental piece. Instead, I decided to create a pastiche is maybe kind of a negative word for some people, but that it's not a bad description. It's a collection of movements from cantatas that he wrote when he was around 30 years old, living in the city of Weimar. And this was when he got the chance, as the blurb says, the young composer was given the opportunity to compose, rehearse, and perform a cantata each month for the princely chapel, the Himmelsburg, which, by the way, is worth, it's gone now, but there's wonderful artistic reproductions of it from the period. It was an amazing chapel, kind of a tall rectangle with the choir loft and the organ in a hole in the ceiling, which was more or less, like a small rectangle in the ceiling with balustrades. And I think maybe were two organs up there. And so the choir was literally like angels singing from above. And so this is where he had written plenty of cantatas in his earlier period, but this is where he got a chance to do it regularly for a while. And of course, as most of you know, eventually when he moved to Leipzig in 1723, he got to write one per week for quite a long time. So this is sort of a preparation for that. But of course, with Bach, as with so many great composers, earlier does not mean not as good. And some of my favorite music from Bach is from this period. I'll give you a couple of quick examples and then we'll wrap up. The first one is from a cantata 182 for Palm Sunday, Himmelskönig sei willkommen. And here is the opening, there's an instrumental prelude, but here's the opening choir movement from that. Very joyful and light, just like you'd expect for Palm Sunday. So just imagine a concert with music like that for a whole evening. It sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Um, and that's one mood, but of course, not all of the pieces are for happy occasions. And another one that's beloved by many and probably known to a number of you, I'm sure, have sung it, um, is Cantata 21, Ich hatte viel Bekümmernis. And this is a thing that used to be terrible, and now it goes in a direction and ends. It starts with a soul-searching opening instrumental sinfonia, and the chorus that you'll hear part of begins with a very kind of almost halting uh, motif. Ich hatte viel Bekümmernis, ich hatte viel Bekümmernis. I had a lot of sadness. And you'll hear, when you listen to the piece, you'll hear that over and over batted between the different sections. And then finally it comes to a full stop and says the word, which in English we would say but, or however, aber, deine Tröstungen, your comfort has saved me. So this piece is one of the ones that starts in grief and ends with trumpets and drums. And it's kind of a surprise entrance, by the way. The only thing the trumpets and drums play is the final movement. It's one of the most triumphant movements that Bach ever wrote, I think. And that's saying a lot. Here's the opening of Ich hatte viel Bekümmernis. I think I skipped the Sinfonia, so this is going to be the opening choir movement. Just that is worth checking out. I, I, I had so much grief. It's simple but incredibly powerful. So you could write down Cantata 21 and check it out on YouTube yourself, because we're kind of out of time here, but I think you'd really enjoy it. And I will say another thing for YouTube, there are these organizations like this one, the Netherlands Bach Society, that have been so incredibly generous in recording all of Bach's works in beautiful performances and making them available online for free. It's like it's easy to get negative about modern kids these days, modern technology, blah blah blah. But that's pretty great stuff. So yeah, there's the season intro. I'm gonna